Good evening and welcome to Up in the Air. I'm Dakota Smith.
And I'm Meredith Fish. Dakota, we have a great lineup tonight. Our Weather Risk Club will be here to talk about a heat wave that hit 1 year ago.
And the November chill has certainly set in, and as an attempt to warm everyone up tonight, Rachel Wells from our TV production class will bring us a feature on the urban heat island.
And sticking with those chilly temperatures, Ryan will be here with our 8 to 14-day climate outlook.
But first, let's get to the latest climate science and weather enterprise news with Update in the Air.
This week, the UN is proposing the new Green Climate Fund, a program for financing solar, wind, and other renewable energy technology in developing countries. This program aims to help developing countries adapt to global warming. The funding provides feed-in tariffs, which will provide energy to owners with guaranteed electricity for over 20 years, ensuring the investor will get return on their capital. This type of program has been successful in Germany and Italy to increase their renewable energy output. The UN is encouraging this proposal in a way to keep the Earth's temperature from exceeding the threshold of 2 degrees Celsius set by climate scientists. Although not ready for operation, this program is designed for 3 classes of countries, one with the least developed states and 2 who are more advanced but still in need of power. However, with many criticisms concerning this project, including how it will affect the country and the energy industry, many are unsure if this proposal is best.
Last Friday, President Obama signed an executive order that directs federal agencies to take a series of steps to make it easier for American communities to strengthen their resilience to extreme weather and prepare for other impacts of climate change. The first step is establishing a task force on climate preparedness and resilience that will then advise the administration on how the federal government can respond to stressed communities. The task force is comprised of state, local, and tribal leaders from across the country. The executive order outlines several sections that should address the following tasks: modernizing federal programs to support climate-resilient investments, managing lands and waters to be resilient, providing information and data to be resilient, and planning for climate change-related risks. This executive order follows President Obama's climate change speech he made this past June, where he introduced his overall plan to combat climate change.
The most recent effect of climate change could be your coffee, as the rising temperatures of Earth could pose a risk to future food supplies. Coffee farmers have seen decreasing yields in coffee's typical lowlands growing area and have thus started to move coffee plants higher in elevation, where temperatures are typically cooler. This response is a positive one, as climate change is pushing most species to change their typical habitat or be exposed to extinction. Although the plants have seen living in cooler areas, it is unsure whether the plant will thrive in this new habitat. The leaked draft from the IPCC report, set to be released in March, has the future of our food supplies in a dire state, especially in the tropics. With many plants in this region used to a small change of temperatures, they are the ones who will be most affected by the warming climate.
A new study out of California State University has suggested that coral reefs may be able to adapt to moderate climate change. Earlier models had suggested that coral reefs would be extinct by the middle of the century. New findings indicate that coral reefs that have adapted to the past 50 years of warming may persist to the end of the century. The most common killer of coral reefs is coral bleaching, that occurs when waters are 1 to 2 degrees Celsius above the summertime normal. This causes the coral reefs to release their algae and achieve a white bleached color. Besides providing color, the algae also provide the corals with food and nourishment. Scientists believe some corals have genetically adapted to moderate warming, so this process doesn't occur. The work published was based on a climate where humans took significant strides to reduce overall warming of the Earth.
Due to recent weather throughout the Midwest, farmers were able to make strides towards the completion of their grain harvest. By Sunday, 60% of Wisconsin's corn harvest was complete and 84% for soybeans. Nationwide, farmers are not that far along, with reports saying 59% of corn and 77% of soybeans have been harvested by October 27th. In Wisconsin, the 5-year average was higher than the current reports of harvest and fieldwork, as weather has been a major effect this season. The colder weather over the area has been unfavorable, especially with those with higher plant moisture. However, due to a late spring earlier in the year, the harvest has been pushed back further than usual and in some cases is weeks later.
Welcome back to Up in the Air. Now we're joined by our Weather Risk Management Club.
Yes, Tom and Faith are here with us to discuss the 2012 North American heat wave.
So let's start off with an overview of what actually happened.
The 2012 North American heat wave occurred from mid-June into mid-July across the majority of the U.S., with the worst impacts being felt over the southern plains. During June 2012, 3,282 daily record highs were set or tied across the country, and in just the first week of July, another 2,278 daily records were set or tied. The total number of daily records set in June 2012 were about the same as that occurred during the month of June, during two of America's hottest summers, which were in 1936 and 1934. Both of these years occurred during the Dust Bowl.
And now tell us, what caused such extreme temperatures during this time span?
The heat wave was caused by an upper-level high-pressure system that formed over the Baja of Mexico and then began to expand northeastward over the southern plains from June 20th to June 23rd. As the dome of high pressure moved, it strengthened. It parked itself over the southern plains on June 23rd and maintained its strength. The heat was due to the fact that under high pressure systems, air sinks towards the surface. The sinking air acts as a dome, capping off the atmosphere. This dome traps the heat. With the heat trapped, it can't rise, condense, and form clouds and precipitation. As a result, extreme drought conditions formed across the southern plains, which helped to strengthen the heat wave.
So how did this affect the United States agriculture industry?
As you may know, the area of the U.S. we've been focusing on is well known for its agricultural importance. $115 billion worth of agricultural goods are exported from the U.S. every year. Since 2011 was also an extreme drought year in the U.S., farms started out the spring of 2012 with more pressure on them than usual. Even though record amounts of crops were planted, by June the output predictions for these huge tracts of land were cut to less than 50%. By mid-July, 30% of the nation's crops and half of its ranges and pastures were reported to be in very poor conditions. Many of the farms in this area produce most of our soybeans, cotton, and corn. Corn is used to feed our cattle and pigs, but since such a huge decrease in output was experienced, many of the livestock could not be supported. Although this caused an initial decrease in beef and pork prices due to the liquidation of livestock, prices soon increased to over 5% from the beginning of the season for beef, pork, and dairy products. This increase in corn prices also affected the prices of everything corn helps make: ethanol, cereal, and soda, to name a few. Overall, our country experienced over $5 billion in agricultural losses due to this drought.
And what effect did this heat wave have on the United States energy demand?
Maximilian Alfhammer, a professor of agricultural and resource economics at UC Berkeley, explained that when residents strain the power grid during a hot summer, many power companies revert to using peaking plants, tapping into energy emergency reserves such as natural gas to serve their customers. This can be very expensive, and even though laws prohibit electricity prices from jumping immediately, power companies eventually increase rates once the demand for electricity declines in order to recover losses. Last summer, Americans spent $52.7 billion on electricity, whereas in 2001, they spent only $30.9 billion.
Now, did this heat wave spark other natural disasters?
Being the biggest fire year since 1960, 2012 has many staggering statistics tied to its history. Since droughts are a vicious cycle of heat and dryness, there was plenty of fuel and spark potential early in the summer. For example, in southwestern New Mexico, the Whitewater Baldy Complex fire was started by a lightning strike in the Gila National Forest in mid-May, but took over 6 weeks to fully contain. In total, it burned through about 300,000 acres and was deemed the state's biggest forest fire ever. The Colorado Springs wildfire is suspected to have been accidentally man-caused, but caused the evacuation of 32,000 people, consumed 17,000 acres, and about 400 homes, costing $352.6 million in damage. Overall, in June alone, 1.36 million acres were burned. The entire year, however, ended with a total of 9.3 million acres destroyed by fire in the U.S.
Thank you, Tom and Faith, and we look forward to our weather risk report next week.
Thanks for having us.
And next week, Paul and Jeff will be here with another risk report.
And Up in the Air will be back in a minute. And welcome back to Up in the Air, and welcome to November, Dakota.
Oh, I thank you, Meredith, and same to you. Ryan is here standing by with us. Ryan, it's been a chilly start to November. Tell us what we have in store for next week.
Thanks, Dakota and Meredith. Well, it's clear that the big story over the past couple of weeks has been a return to cooler weather across much of the nation, with even snow falling through parts of the upper Midwest and high plains. And in terms of our weather here in Pennsylvania, we're not expecting any snow anytime soon, and that is certainly some good news. The temperature outlook for the period from November 13th through the 19th, we're going to have this zone of much above normal temperatures invading much of the center and southeast part of the nation. I imagine that some above normal air will tend to move into especially western Pennsylvania, but the cold will have a difficult time letting go through the northeast and New England, and that's where we're expecting below normal temperatures during this period. Similar story on the west coast, with much below normal temperatures for Oregon and up into the coast of Washington as well. In terms of precipitation, actually this hasn't changed much from last week's outlook. Below normal precipitation expected for the 8 to 14 day period through the southeastern part of the nation. There will be a corridor of above normal precipitation for the Midwest all the way through Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then looking out through the west coast, it'll likely end up being below normal once again here through the Four Corners region, and they could certainly use the rain. There's no two ways about that. And then above normal precipitation is expected along with those below normal temperatures through the Pacific Northwest. So certainly interesting changes going on here in the weather department, but it doesn't appear any major changes are on the way for us here in Pennsylvania. That's the climate outlook for this week. Up next, we have a student from our TV production class here with this week's Meteorology Minute.
Do you live in an urban area? If so, you live on an island. Not just any island, an urban heat island. By definition, an urban heat island is a metropolitan area that is significantly warmer than the surrounding rural area. This is due to human activity and modification of land surfaces with materials such as asphalt and concrete. As you can see on this graph, the section marked as downtown has a higher daytime and nighttime temperature than others, such as ponds, suburbs, and rural areas. During a summer day when the air temperature is in the 90s, the sun can heat dark surfaces of buildings and pavement to over 145 degrees Fahrenheit. It's important to be aware of urban heat islands because high heat can be dangerous for many groups of people. High heat can also contribute to worsened air quality. Days with higher temperatures typically are accompanied by higher, unhealthy levels of ozone. These are some of the major cities that experience the urban heat island effect. These cities absorb radiation during the day, and it remains in the concrete, asphalt, and buildings, unlike the surrounding suburban and rural areas. In the United States alone, over 1,000 people die every year due to extreme heat. As you can see on this map, areas shaded dark red and orange experience over 9 days every year of extreme heat. In 2006, a deadly 2-week heat wave swept the nation. It hit California the hardest, and the state saw an additional 16,000 emergency room visits. New York City is one of the largest urban heat islands that is constantly being evaluated in different studies. Many strategies are being implemented, such as green roofs, in order to reduce surface temperatures. These roofs are partially or completely covered by vegetation to provide shade, filter pollutants, and cool the surrounding air. There are many ways you can stay cool during extreme heat days, such as staying indoors where there is air conditioning or wearing lightweight clothing. It is also important to stay hydrated by drinking more water than usual and stay informed of local heat alerts in your area. For Up in the Air, I'm Rachel Wells.
That's going to do it for us. We hope all the heat in this episode has kept you warm and snug tonight.
Yes, Dakota, it's got me thinking about skipping down to the tropics for a few days.
That would certainly be nice, Meredith. We'd like to thank the Weather Risk Management Club and our TV production class for the content tonight.
And we'll be here next Thursday with another exciting episode. But for now, I'm Meredith Fish.
And I'm Dakota Smith. Join us next time, Up in the Air.